In Ecuador, the local and national governments assist the La Gasca neighborhood to recover from the disaster caused by the recent downpour. Russian President Vladimir Putin met his Argentine counterpart Alberto Fernandez in Moscow on Thursday for talks on bilateral strategic cooperation concerning political, economic, cultural, and humanitarian affairs. At least 13 people, including 6 children, have been killed during a United States Special Ops raid in Syria's Idlib province, according to residents and first responders. Hi, this is From the South. I'm your news anchor, Dio Martin, from the teleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with news. We have updated information from Ecuador on the activities carried out by the local and national governments to help La Gasca neighborhood recover from the disaster. Our correspondent, Orlando Perez, shared the details.
Thank you for the attention to this important issue for Ecuador, because of course, the situation is not resolved yet. Up to this moment, official figures have 26 dead, one more than yesterday, 53 injured, and there are 10 people still missing. What is evident is the effective, daily, hard, powerful, and unrelenting actions of several social organizations and public institutions. That is why we would like to invite the Secretary of Productive Development of the city of Quito, Daniela Espinosa, who is in charge of the municipality. How are you, Daniela? It is a pleasure to have you here. How is this process going to be? Which are the reparations, the attention to the victims, and the solutions you have foreseen?
Thank you very much. From here, we are trying to recover everything. This is a temporary reception point, when people cannot enter the post that is in the Central University, but what we have here is a permanent space for perishable food, and our role is to feed the workers. We are municipal, provincial, national government. It does not matter. Here, we give them support for the private companies, from the Secretary of Productive Development, and we deploy all the help we can manage to the disaster area.
And do people come here who want to deliver food voluntarily, or do you only receive the aid already sent by the institutions?
The ones sent by the institutions arrived at the beginning, because it was not possible to go to the disaster site, but not now. The ones sent by the institutions, because of their size, go directly to the disaster site. But what we have here is to cover the daily needs, and the companies also help us with this.
As an official of the municipality, how do you evaluate the attention to the population? To what extent have you been able to cover their needs, or what are their shortcomings up to this moment?
This is a reaction process. It is a process of protocols. We follow. I, as a representative from the Ministry of Productive Development and Competitiveness, did an inventory of all the premises here, and with that, we can make a post-reaction analysis of what we are going through at the moment.
Thank you very much, Daniela. Very kind. That was Daniela Espinosa from the Secretary of Productive Development of the Municipality of Quito. We are in one of the least impacted areas, but this does not mean that it was not hard. Here you can hear the machinery of the public entities that are mobilizing and cleaning the debris in the lower part of the neighborhood of La Gasca, where the disaster hit the hardest. As you can see, there are members of the National Police organizing the aid for the population. It is worth mentioning that today, the prefecture of Pichincha started the reforestation process of the area where the landslide started. This area has been exploited by human beings, by real estate companies, by sectors that want to build constructions of any kind and that evidently can't continue anymore. The prefecture and the government of Pichincha started today and will be throughout the year the reforestation process recommended by experts and environmentalists to counteract the impacts of this disaster. On the other hand, national authorities, as well as those from the central government, have visited the site. They set mobile hospitals, shelters with food, towels and medicines for the affected population. Of course, it is not enough, because the magnitude of this event is so much that not even all the government personnel could attend to it, because everything is difficult due to the lack of mobility, because the roads are blocked by the mud and rocks that fell in the area. We are attentive and will continue to report throughout the day. The only thing I can tell you is that the sun has been with us since yesterday, and that makes the work in this area much easier.
On Wednesday, Guatemala's public prosecutor's office announced the arrest of 9 people implicated in the massacre of June 29, 1982, when 25 people died in the village of El Rancho Bajuco in Baja Verapaz. The detainees remain under custody of charges of homicide and crimes against humanity. The spokesperson for the Attorney General's office explained that they are former military personnel and members of the paramilitary patrols created by the army to have control over the population during the armed conflict. On January 24th, 5 former paramilitaries were sentenced to 30 years in prison for sexual violence against an indigenous woman in the municipality of Rabinal, Baja Verapaz in the 1980s. During the civil war in Guatemala from 1960 to 1996 that left 200,000 dead and about 45 people disappeared. This Thursday begins the electoral ban in Costa Rica, which prohibits the publication of polls on voting intentions for the general elections to be held next Sunday, February 6th. This electoral silence comes in addition to the existing ban since Monday, 31st January, which prevents campaign events in public spaces. Despite this measure, the electoral law does not prohibit the holding of debates between the presidential candidates, which is why this Thursday night a discussion is scheduled to be broadcast between the 6 runner-ups with the highest voting intentions, according to different opinion polls. More than 3.5 million citizens are called to choose a president, 2 vice presidents, and the 57 deputies to the Legislative Assembly, who will serve in the term 2022-2026. We'll be right back after this very short break. Don't go away. Hi, welcome back to you from the South. The Cuban government denounced the continuity for over 6 years of the economic, commercial, and financial blockade formerly imposed by the United States.
On February 3, 1962, President John F. Kennedy issued an executive order imposing an embargo on all trade with Cuba. These punitive economic sanctions against the island were taken in the aftermath of the triumph of the revolution. Declassified records have shown that the initial concept of the U.S. economic pressure was to create hardship and disenchantment among the Cuban population and to deny money and supplies, in order to decrease monetary and real wages, to bring about hunger, desperation, and the overthrow of the government. At the present moment, there is practically no country in the world that does not condemn the blockade. The United Nations General Assembly has voted on 29 consecutive occasions against these coercive measures. Last July, 184 countries rejected the blockade, while only Ukraine, Brazil, and Colombia abstained from voting. Nowadays, only the U.S. and Israel do not condemn the commercial blockade against the island. After 6 decades of this policy, damages reach nearly $150,000 billion, over $5 billion in losses since 2015. Food and agriculture sectors are the worst affected, with more than $400 million in losses between 2019 and 2020. And the healthcare system with more than $160 million in the same period. Tourism has also been affected with $1.8 billion in losses.
In Brazil, a Congress gathering diverse movements and organizations from all sectors of civil society is underway. Unions, activists, and political leaders joined their voices in efforts with the Workers' Party to organize a struggle for the respect of their rights and a more equal distribution of wealth in the country, with their focus on at-risk communities and marginalized citizens. Our correspondent Brian Meyer will tell you more about it.
During a seminar in Brazilian Congress called Resistance and the Passage to Hope, held this week along with the Landless Workers Movement, CONTAG Rural Laborers Union, and the CUT Union Federation, the Brazilian Workers' Party laid out plans to create 5,000 neighborhood political organizing committees in urban peripheries and poor rural areas.
We are calling them popular committees. We want the people to be organized. We know that democracy in Brazil is very limited, not just right now, but in past moments too. If it wasn't there, wouldn't have been such a great coup against President Dilma, and Lula wouldn't have been in prison.
The idea of the committees is that they will improve communications between the party and its working class base. When election season begins, they can help mobilize the vote, but more importantly, there will be a way to increase popular participation in party decisions and will help protect against future right-wing coup attempts if Lula is elected.
There's only one way to prevent a coup, and that is with well-organized people. As a party, we hope that the committees become an instrument of organizing our party base and our social base, so that if and when Lula is elected, they can accompany his government and the projects that it implements.
Over 100,000 members of the PT's base participated in recent internal elections for working group leaders on issues such as women's, Afro-Brazilian, and LGBTQ+ rights. So the party decided to build on this momentum by forming these committees.
Guaranteeing that there is resistance is fundamental for Brazil, and to mobilize for a great transformation, we need to increase the debate with our people. The Brazilian people want to participate, and a popular working class party, like the Workers' Party, has the obligation and the responsibility to go where our people are.
Brian Mir, teleSUR, Brasilia.
Russian President Vladimir Putin met his Argentine counterpart Alberto Fernandez in Moscow on Thursday for talks on bilateral strategic cooperation concerning political, economic, cultural, and humanitarian matters. Putin has thanked the Argentine president for the fact that his country was the first in the Western Hemisphere to approve the use of the Russian vaccine, by maintaining that Argentina could become a gateway for Russia's entry into Latin America in a more decisive way. Fernandez indicated that Buenos Aires is collaborating so that the Sputnik V vaccine reaches Ecuador, Paraguay, Peru, and other places on the continent. Fernandez also said to be convinced that Argentina has to stop being so dependent on the IMF and the U.S. and be more involved with other countries, and that is where Russia, he says, will come in perfectly.
During the talks held in a business-like and constructive way, together with Mr. President, we have reviewed in detail the whole complex of our bilateral relations. We have pointedly discussed possible directions of the further development of Russian-Argentinian strategic partnership. We have exchanged views on some topical international and regional issues. During the exchanges of views on global and regional issues, we have confirmed that Russian and Argentinian positions converge or are close on many issues. Our countries firmly defend the supremacy of international law, sovereignty, independence, and non-interference in internal affairs of other states. We have agreed to continue coordinating our efforts on main multilateral issues at international platforms, including the United Nations.
An earthquake of 6.8 magnitude on the Richter scale shook the Peruvian Amazon region, according to the Peruvian Geophysical Institute on Thursday. The epicenter of the earthquake that was registered at 10 a.m. local time was located 90 kilometers east of the town of Santa Maria de Nieves in the province of Condorcanqui, department of Amazonas. The telluric movement originated 139 kilometers above the surface in the same locality. Authorities informed that there is no tsunami alert or fatalities or injuries. Peru is located in the area known as the Pacific Ring of Fire, where approximately 85% of the world's seismic activity takes place. In Kenya, there have been persistent attempts by powerful individuals to grab chunks of legendary forests so far protected by historic laws against uncontrolled logging and environmental destruction. A proposal is expected to be presented in Parliament this Thursday that aims to radically change these protections by allowing politicians to determine whether public forests can be stripped and handed over to private interests. This means one wishing to alter forest boundaries to claim ownership of the land could lobby Parliament directly without needing the approval of the Kenya Forest Service, which is currently mandated to review such bids. The amendment to the Forest Conservation and Management Act, reforms passed after decades of rampant logging, has been opposed by the Ministry of the Environment and the Kenya Forest Service and has drawn significant community anger.
The forest is very, very important to us because it is a home to biodiversity. We have a lot of animals inside here, a lot of plants, and the forest also provides a carbon sink for all the pollution that happens around the city. If it happens to get through, and we don't hope it will, that will mean now we lose the forests because the current act is very well protecting the forests as they are now. Because since it was enacted, we've not had any successful excision from the forest. But if it goes through that anybody can go petition Parliament and the forest boundaries are altered, that will open Pandora's box. Everybody wants a piece of the forest, which is very, very dangerous for our forests and our future.
We have more stories coming up after this final short break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. At least 13 people, including 6 children, have been killed during a United States Special Ops Force raid in Syria's Idlib province, according to residents and first responders. The overnight raid targeted a building in Atma, a densely populated town in northwest Syria near the Turkish border, where tens of thousands of people displaced by the country's decade-long war live. There was no immediate information about the identity of those living in the building. Unconfirmed reports said the target was an ISIL or al-Qaeda-affiliated leader. The Pentagon said in a statement that U.S. forces had carried out a counterterrorism operation without elaborating much on the details. Residents said the helicopters were hovering over the building for more than 2 hours before attacking it. The U.S. Special Forces then proceeded to carry out a landing operation and stormed the house.
The operation started around 1 in the morning. First we heard the sound of a helicopter. It lasted for about 45 minutes and then we heard small explosions. Then we heard stronger explosions. The aircraft stayed in the air for about 3 hours. Then we came to the area and we found that they hit the house. We heard that 9 people died here, but nobody knows who was actually here.
Today, Guinea-Bissau President Umaru Sissoco Embalo visited the scene of the attack on him in the attempted coup that left 11 people dead. President Umaru Sissoco Embalo survived a gun attack in the uprising on Tuesday afternoon, where 11 people were killed, according to the government of the West African nation. In his visit to the scene, he called on the people to stop the provocation and trust the investigation committee and the justice system. A military official informed that the army has launched a vast operation, including at the headquarters of the government, to find the commanders and protagonists of the failed coup.
I can't say more at the moment, so as not to interrupt the ongoing investigation, which is managed by the Public Prosecutor's Office, and which will be carried out in complete transparency. I want people to stop provocation. We have to stop provocation in the name of self-defense. So far, no one has been charged. We have to trust the investigation team and our justice system.
The military tribunal in Burkina Faso resumed the trial against the killers of revolutionary leader and former President Thomas Sankara days after the military government reestablished the constitution. On Monday, the court announced the suspension of the trial because of a recent coup that led to the dissolution of the National Assembly and suspension of the constitutional rights. The session heard closing arguments that were scheduled to begin before soldiers led by Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba seized power and deposed President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore. It was the final stage of arguments before a verdict was announced. The trial of 14 defendants accused of plotting Sankara's assassination began in October at a military court in the nation's capital, 34 years after his murder. Sankara assumed power in 1983 and was killed on October 15, 1987 during a coup led by former President Blaise Compaoré, a former ally and main defendant in the case. Beijing, the capital of China, is ready for the opening of the 24th Winter Olympic Games on Friday, which will make the capital the first city in the world to host both the Winter and Summer Olympics.
With only 1 day to go until the opening ceremony of the Beijing 2022 Olympic Winter Games, the capital of China is fully ready to host this important sporting event that creates great interest and is a source of pride for the locals. The Winter Olympics, to take place between February 4th to the 20th, will be carried out under the strict epidemiological measures against COVID-19 and will work under the closed bubble system, which implies daily PCR tests, permanent temperature monitoring, mandatory use of masks in collective areas, and social distancing. The organizing committee also canceled the sale of tickets to the public, and the few attendees will be invited group. Almost 3,000 athletes from 91 nations will compete to get their hands on one of the 109 gold medals on offer across 7 sports. Both the International Olympic Committee and China have insisted on the environmental legacy of these games, reusing venues built in 2008 and the development of renewable energies to supply the facilities and for transportation. Despite calls from the United States and other nations to boycott the Olympics, more than 30 international leaders confirmed their presence at the opening ceremony. Chinese authorities have condemned attempts to politicize the sport and promised that Beijing, the first city to host both the Summer and Winter Olympic Games, will offer an unprecedented performance.
We've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at teleSUR English. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Dio Martin. Thanks for watching.